Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Express. Well, this is a new week and a new episode on what is becoming everyone's favorite talk show. You'll agree with me that it is encouraging, exciting, profound, real, energizing, sensible, and sensitive. This is what Express is all about, and much more. So, without any further delay, please help me welcome back to the stage the beautiful, expressive, talented, and savvy director of Express. She's called Carolyn. Carolyn, take it away.
Yes, I'm your host, Carolyn from Express. Express is the show for the people who want to express themselves by telling us their story, so that we can learn from it. By the way, it's a new year. How is your year so far? Welcome. So great that we could be alive for 2023. So we'll just move on. But before I go on to introduce my guests for today, I want to say those who have been with us since 2 months ago in 2022, we want to welcome you. Thank you for subscribing, so that you can get the contents that we do provide. And for those of you who just stopped by today, thank you for coming, but don't forget to subscribe so you can continually listen to the stories. We have a lot in store for you for this year. Our guest today is none other than Billy Mirander. He is a youthful man, and he is an international evangelist and an author of 2 books, The Upcoming Earthquake and The Journey to Be Remembered. He is coming from a life of violence to the life of grace. And he's studying now as a ministerial student, started the process at NCU, Northern Caribbean University, and now he's at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. He's married to Abigail Foster Mirander, and they have a beautiful baby girl by the name of Isabel Rachel. Without further ado, let's watch a video where he will tell you the beginning of his story.
Warm Christian greetings to you all, fellow brothers and sisters in Christ across the world. My name is Billy Alariz Mirander. I was born and raised in Jamaica between St. Catherine and Kingston. Currently, I'm a student at Oakwood University doing a Bachelor of Arts in Ministerial Theology and a minor in Biblical Languages. I'm also the president of Jesus is the Way Prayer Ministry and an evangelist who preaches the gospel far and wide across the world. I want to say to every single person, we're living in a very serious time. Crime and violence have reached a place where it has created many pains in the hearts of young men and women across America and across the world today. I have a very interesting past, a past that will blow your mind to see what a young man could really experience in his early life just because of one death of a family member. In 2005, the last child for my grandmother on my mother's side of the family, my aunt Maria Celestine Fort, was shot and killed. She was killed, and when she was killed, we ran to the crime scene. We saw her in the pool of blood. It was a very frightening experience for me. At that time, I was just 12 years old in November, in 2005 when it happened. I just started Old Harbor High School in September of that year. I didn't know where to turn because this was a shock to the entire family. I was so traumatized. I cried night after night because my aunt, she died to leave 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. one will ask the question, how did my aunt, how did this happen? She was in a relationship, a very abusive relationship, and she should have gotten out of it early, but she stayed in that relationship with her children's father. He was very abusive, very obsessed. He would watch her, sometimes go to a workplace, send, death messages, and he do all those crazy stuff. He sometimes come by the home where my grandmother was living, my aunt was living at my grandmother's house, and he would make fight there. It was a chaos relationship, back and forth abuse. And my aunt, in her lack of knowledge at the time, didn't seek the help she should. She stayed in the relationship. Her mother said to her on the dying bed, Mar, you need to leave this guy. He's going to kill you. I'll never forget, after my grandmother went to the hospital in Kingston Public, and we got the news she was killed. She had died because my grandma, she had cancer. And when we heard she died, it really troubled our heart to know I've lost my grandma. After her death in 2000, it was very devastating because when she died in the same period of time, matter of fact, my grandma died before my aunt was killed. She died 2004, and in 2005, when my aunt left the relationship between this guy and her, when they broke up, he started to send more death threats, saying to her, if you don't get back to me with a relationship with me, I'm going to kill you. What happened? The news came to us from credible sources in the community and both from law enforcement that he paid someone to have her killed. That experience was traumatizing for me. So for 1 year and almost 6 months, I remember I meditated on the death of my aunt so much. I cried night after night. And I said to myself, I must find some gangster friends because I need to take revenge. Because this guy who paid for my aunt to be killed, his life needs to be ended. Not only did I say that at the time, I was concerned about the one who pulled the trigger, who I heard who he was. So my ultimate goal is to get into gang life and take out these two persons. The question is, will I find any of those two persons I'm looking for? All I wanted is to take revenge. Blood was on my heart. Blood was in my mind. Blood was in my eyes. What do I mean by that? All surround my life was revenge. And I wanted to take revenge. And so my journey took a very dark chapter. And that dark chapter of my journey, it reached a place where I went to an area in Kingston where my godfather would bring me to karate class. And I learned karate. And I also voluntarily went on my own to where a few boxers were training to learn the moves of boxing. At the same time, I went to an area in Old Harbour, a certain area in St. Catherine. And while I was there, I'll never forget what happened. I met a guy, he's a deceased now, TG. He was a member of a well-known gang. And just to let you know, today, I don't think we have 3 or 4 of them alive today from this gang. But at the time, it was plenty. And he told me, I said to him, TG, because when I went to spend holiday with my cousin in that certain part of St. Catherine, I always spend the weekends there, and I spend like 1 and 2 public holidays there, both between there in St. Catherine and in Kingston. And as a result of that, when I was there in St. Catherine, and I met the guy, he was not living far from where my cousin was, that I stayed with. And, I used to smoke then as a young man. I used to smoke, idle smoking. So I would go to the shops, and that's where I met him. So I said to him, TG, I see you're a gangster. A man killed my aunt. I know the one who pulled the trigger. I know the one who pays the money. How can I get revenge? I need a firearm for myself. He said, we don't give firearms like that or lend firearms like that. You have to be a part of our gang. And when you become a part of our gang, then what I'm going to do is allow you to get your own firearm. But you will have to go through a series of experience. And when you go through a series of experience, then in that case, you pass the test and we'll allow you to have your own firearm. So just to let you know, the world turned upside down because going to this gang was a very vicious gang. And these men, they're humans, but they have the heart of animals. And so what will happen to my young life at 13 years old as a young man? This was a very dark day, dark month, a dark year in the life of a 13-year-old.
Pastor Billy Mirander, welcome to Express. Welcome to our show. How are you today?
Greetings, Sister Carolyn. I'm giving God thanks. It's a blessing to be here and to share with you and your viewers.
Yes, I know we've been trying to connect with each other from ever since, but because you've been so busy, spreading the word, you were unable to be here until just now. So we're very grateful for that. So let's move on now that you're here. And as we just saw the video, it gave us an idea from the beginning, from your younger age to when your aunt passed. Now, I just want you now to expand a little. I'm going to ask you a few questions. So, you said a year and a half about you just could not get this out of your mind. Tell me, what was going through your mind during those times?
Well, it's a very important question to get to the point where we're trying to get. So at that time, at 12 plus, when my aunt was killed, for 1 year and 6 months, I was traumatized by the experience for a few reasons. One, I missed my aunt. She was the last child from my grandma on my mother's side of the family. And we were very close. And she died, leaving 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. Her son at the time was 2 years old. And when I look at the impact her death has on the children, it broke my heart every day. When I look at the impact of my family, my mother fainted at the crime scene twice. And I was able to go to the crime scene to see her on the ground, lying down in the pool of blood. And so seeing that sight was something I will never forget. It has never left my mind. For all these years, she has died. And it has been a very long time. In a few years, it will be roughly 2 decades now. And so it has never left my mind. And so at the time, it was overwhelming. My heart was broken. And my relatives were crying every day. Know they have lost their mom. And also my other relatives, in terms of my aunts and uncles, they were angry, they were crying. And so it took a hold on me. And I've never lost. So when I lost my grandma the year before, it broke my heart in 3 pieces, who were very close to me. And so losing my grandma and then my aunt in less than 2 years afterwards, it was devastating for me. And so that's why I couldn't get out of my head of the pain I was going through.
So can you remember the last time you spoke to your aunt before that happened? Well,
interestingly, I spoke to her the day of her death. And so normally I was a member of the track and field team at Old Harbor High School in St. Catherine, Jamaica. And I recall, she used to work in a shopping mall, we say in North America, but she used to work in the plaza, and we'll say shopping mall here in North America. And, there's a location there, the grocery store she used to work at. And every evening after school, I would go by her workplace, wait on her to leave work, accompany her to get her a cab or a taxi to go home. Because in Jamaica, most of these taxis, they operate on a base. So, for example, whichever base it is, based on the location you're headed. And so it's not like in America where we call cab. I mean, we call cabs in Jamaica, but mostly they're at their own stand, their own section where they transport people from one location to another. And so I would always accompany her to where her particular location is, where she take transportation to go home. And so that evening I went by her and she asked me not to stay with her. She was going to leave later. And I insisted to stay. She said, no, you can leave me. And so I left her, went home. And my sister and I, well, two of my siblings and two of my relatives, we went to shop, a nearby shop to buy something. And shortly, kind of an hour or 2 hours afterwards. And that was when we got the news she was shot. First, we never knew she died. We heard she was shot and killed. Some say she was shot and injured there. And we ran to the crime scene. But I spoke to her the same evening. And so it was very frightening. I couldn't believe it was real. So it's like I'm talking to you right now. And in an hour time, I hear you passed on.
Wow.
And so I decided it was going to be a very dark period in my life.
Wow. And if I remember, or if I can recall from the video, who was the one responsible for taking her life?
Well, based on the police report and other evidence that came forth public, her children's father paid someone to have her executed, to have her killed. And he paid the person roughly $320 US, equivalent to 40,000 Jamaican dollars. Roughly, the rates change at times. And half was given up before the job was done, and half is to be given afterwards. That's what was told to us by police report and other reports around the community where she was killed.
Oh, so sorry to hear. So your mother is now dead. Your mother is now dead. Now your aunt. So there's not many people.
No, correction, not my mom, my grandma.
Your grandma. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
My mother,
So your
yeah.
grandma, your grandma, and then your aunt died. So, but how was the family at that time when after those two people died?
It was in disarray. Everyone was traumatized. She was like the pride of the family. You know, in Jamaica, the last child for any parent is called was a term used, wash belly. And that term is used for the child who gets the most attention. It's the last child for the parent. And so she was the pride and joy of the family. And her death, she died at 29 years old. At the time, she was very young. And she died with 3 kids. And so it was very traumatizing for the family. And everyone was overwhelmed by the experience. And so the family was destroyed. My grandma was the one who kept the family together, in the sense that she was the one, family reunion, many events, everyone would attend to her house. Her house, her home was the place that everyone would come. Every family members, even the ones who were a celebrity in life, singers, the pilots of the family, all this, they would come together there. She's a unifier, and you can't keep malice. She's the boss. And so when she died, it was emotional for the family. And then her daughter died a year and a couple of months afterwards. It was very overwhelming. So the family was in disarray. There was a lot of pain. I saw what pain is. I understand what real pain is. And I want to say to people that losing someone you love like this, I saw what pain is. And I must be honest with you. That pain, there's a hole in my heart. I'm afraid it will remain there until Jesus comes to remove that hole from my heart. Because when my grandma died, a part of my life went apart, and it's someone. She was my best friend. My grandma taught me everything that life could taught someone, and she was the one I would talk to when I'm going through the struggles and the different phase of life. I could share with her at a young age, and I could talk to her about anything, and I trust her very much. And so when I lose my grandma, I want the viewers to understand, and only if you grow with your grandparents, you understand the touch. In Jamaica, most time, well, things are changing now, but in my time growing up, the grandparents were the one who grows the kids, always grow their children and the children kids. And so my grandma was my best friend. So when she died, my heart was torn. And so there's been a hole in my heart since she died. I missed her very much, and by God's grace, I'm looking forward to see her again. And she was the one. When I'm going through my struggles and the different journeys and the period of my life, all through, since what you're going to talk about my conversion. I know she was alive today. She'd be the happiest grandma in the world, but also that she'll be someone I could go to in my time of distress, in time of overwhelming situations. I could go to her and share. And so I no longer have her anymore, but I could go and pour my heart to.
I remember you saying in the video about, I'm not sure if it's there or where I heard it, where your mom told your aunt that she should be careful of the relationship that she had ongoing. Tell us a little bit more about that.
All right. So it was my grandma who had warned her mother, had warned her to leave the guy. So what happened is that he was really, I would say, he was insecure of her because he used to beat her physically. And he was mostly, I would say, someone who was very, violent and physical, hitting her. And so he would always hit her if you didn't want her to have any male friends, only relatives that he knows about. He was very insecure for that. And so she was a very beautiful young lady. Beautiful. I tell you, sometimes when I look at the pictures, it's just too real to be true that she died like that. And so what happened is that during that period of time, her grandma would warn her every moment, said, "Mary, you need to leave him. He's going to kill you." And she would say, "Mom, he loves me. That's why he beats me." She thought that the beating he was giving her is because he loves her. Or she just believed that, she had some crazy ideas of what love is, but it was overwhelming and was very painful to see that happen. I used to have to get involved in the fights that they were having, trying to part them. I was so small then, and my entrance was not much impact. But other of my siblings would try, because we never liked to see them fight. And when he tried to fight her at my grandma's house, she wasn't afraid of him. She was very serious. And she would also attack him if he tried to fight her, her daughter. So it was very overwhelming. And so I always say to young people, your parents were biased sometimes of their views of other individuals. But there's some wisdom that are important to be understood when warned about someone. Evidence and facts is important. And always remember, someone does not become another person overnight. It is something that is developed in the heart. And so he was not someone who just started beating person. It was happening for years. And she was able to stay with it until it resulted in her death. And so it's important to understand the difference between an action or just speculation. He was not speculating his behavior. He was acting it out. They were together from they were in high school. So it's not like they just met each other off the street. So she knew who the person was. And they have been in a relationship longer than most people have, because they've been from high school. And not many persons meet their sweetheart in high school. But some have. And so that's how far they're coming from. So it was overwhelmed. Her mother warned her. She never took heed of the instructions.
So if you should say, just give a word before we go on now to what was your determination to do I just want you for this moment to just pretend that you're looking, or someone is watching you who is being abused, physically abused by their spouse. What advice would you give that person right now?
Okay, question. So my advice is this. First of all, find someone spiritual who is confidential, because family matters are very sensitive, and get help. Try to get someone who has no desire in seeing the destruction of the family. Someone who loves both of you and who are unbiased in their advice. Because I've seen many relationships with physical abuse where God has saved. Some has not made it, some has made it. And so it all depends on, well, I will say to you, always get help. But get help from someone who is spiritual and who has no bias on either side. And not someone, if you're a female, don't go to a man who has an ulterior motive. And if you're a male, the same way as well. And try and remember, when you're broken, it is destructive to go to broken people for advice. So when you're broken, seek individuals who are not broken as your story is, who desire your happiness, who desire the other person's happiness as well. And if you have children, they want to see the family together, and get help. And once that man is willing to get help, then the marriage can be saved, the relationship can be saved. If he's not willing to get help, then this is where it boils down to a decision of life or death. However, I will say to you, get help, because once the hitting starts, physical hitting starts, then it will lead to death if it continues with no intervention. And it might be too late if you wait until it's late. So that's my advice to anyone who's going through that situation.
All right. Thank you. I hope someone somewhere listening will take your advice. Now, I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to ask you. I want you to just go straight on to conversion. From now, you've seen what happened to your aunt, and you've determined in your heart that you're going to get revenge. Go ahead.
Well, so because of the death of my aunt, my heart, my life ripped apart. And so all I wanted was blood. I wanted to see what death was like. I wanted to taste death. I wanted to see death up front close. I want to see punishment for those who are responsible for my aunt's death. And so I decided to turn a gangster. After training, learning how to fight, learning how to box, and learning how to handle firearm, I decided to venture into the most dangerous territory. And the most dangerous territory was to get very violent. And that's where my life went apart. And so I went into evil and sinful lifestyle, believing I could just jump out. And I must say to all young people who are watching at this time, sin or evil will take you further than you ever planned to go and keep you longer than you ever planned to stay. Because after I got deep, the gang I joined, these men are human beings, but they have the heart of animals. These are men who taste human blood. These are men who has no heart whatsoever. They say animal heart. And so I went into join their gang after winning their confidence, because they told me I need to do some things, and I had to do some dangerous things. And after doing those dangerous actions, I won their confidence. And so I was recruited to be a part of it. And so that month, that year became a very dark year. So while I'm in high school, I'm fighting an outside war. And the main purpose of me getting the gang is just for the revenge of two persons' life. But the sin is so sweet and evil is so sweet that it keep me longer than I ever planned to stay. It take me further than I ever planned to go, and it keep me longer than I planned to stay. And so the devil used other things at the time I didn't know about evil. But then I'm exposed to it, and then it become enticing. So I'm attracted, and then after getting involved deep in the gangster life, I was introduced to demonic ritual. And that's where I started to go through different rituals. Rituals of you taking off the clothes, put a bucket, fill it with water. They have a liquid of slime stuff inside of it, with animal stuff. You have to take shower inside of that. We have to burn cold pot. We go through so much different rituals of witchcraft. And that's when I realized that evil is real. And I had a chance to interact with demons. So there was no turning back. And everyone in my family turned their back on me, except for my mother. And she began to pray. And the more she prays, is the worse my condition became. And so I was down a path of no return. The devil pulled me down that pathway, and that pathway was the most destruction of my life. My friends were dying every single day, and I was deeply involved in the gang, deeply involved in police intercourse, interaction with police, rather back and forth with the law, with other gunmen. It was just terrible. In high school, I received suspension after suspension, almost to the point of being expelled from school. There was just no turning back in my life. And my life was about to be destroyed. But the man who killed my aunt, the one who killed her, actually shoot her, he died. But the one who pays the money, he's the one that I said I want his life, and so I could just turn myself into the authorities. That never happened. I searched. The more I searched and try to find him, bump into him a few times, I was not able to successfully take him out. So then I kept being in the gang life longer than I ever planned to stay. And so from there on to demonic ritual, I have to attend rituals 4 times a week. So how could God change a man who has been so deeply involved in evil? Both witchcraft and the gang violence, and there was no turning back, both in high school and in the outside world. And so my mother didn't see me until 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30. But she was praying, and Jerkins says in the song, tears are language, only God understands. And I want to say this to all mothers who are out there praying for your wayward children. My mother prayed night and day. She prayed that no one human being could ever understand. Her heart was broken. Imagine you're praying for your son or your daughter, and the more you're praying is the worse their lifestyle is becoming. I was getting deeper and deeper in witchcraft, deeper and deeper in gun violence. Every time a gunshot fired over where I was hanging out in the turf with my friends, her heart leaps. And when I come home in the morning, she'd wait until I come home some of the times to pray in my presence. And those moments were heartbreaking for me, because to hear my mother cry, tears, praying to God, asking God to change me. The prayers used to offend me. At some point, the prayers also broke my heart. And her pillow would wet with tears. She would cry, she would pray. But I want to say to all mothers, never stop praying for your wayward children. God does not work outside in, he works inside out. And everyone, they told my mother to kill me in my sleep, to poison me, to send me to juvenile home, to send me to prison, to do whatever she can do, and because I'm an embarrassment. But my mother never stopped praying for me. Never underestimate the power of a mother's prayer. My mother prayed and cried. And I tell you something, I can tell you this. I am a product of the power of God through a mother's prayer. And she never stopped praying. And the worship, and she showed me love right through the process. So even though I was a gangster and a junior don to people, I was her baby. I was her son. And she was never afraid of me, in my opinion. And but one thing always melt my heart. She was praying for me right in my presence. And I say to some mothers, I know it might be uncomfortable, but your children giving you trouble, pray in their presence. Let they hear exactly what you're telling God. And she wasn't praying a bad prayer for me. She was just praying, God, please save my son. And we were having a conversation a couple of years ago, and she told me the last prayer she prayed to God was, Lord, the day you change my son is the day I'm going to serve you. And she prayed for almost 4 years. And
Wow.
it's powerful. Before I get to the detailed conversion part, but I want to emphasize that part. That right through the gang life, my mother was praying for me. Involving shootout, near-death experience, she was praying for me. Police came several times to take me out. And as a result of my mother's presence and her prayers, miracles happened. And so I tell you something, there's power in the prayer, in the God we pray to.
Yes, we want to thank Billy Miranda, Pastor Billy Miranda, for stopping by here today. and telling his story. Mind you, it's part 1 of his story. So don't forget to tune in on Tuesday for part 2. And as usual, what I normally do, I would leave a thought after each episode. But today, I felt compelled to do a little bit more. I want to leave the domestic violence number so that anyone watching this and know that they're going through that situation, that they'll have a number handy so that they can make a call for help. The national domestic violence number is 800-799-7233. Let me repeat, 800-799-7233. And you can text, also 88788. Let me repeat, 88788. You might be going through domestic violence where you're suffering physical violence, sexual violence, or psychological violence, or just neglect. Don't delay. Call that number. Okay? Now, it's a hotline number, I should add. It is a 24/7 number. It's in different languages, English, Spanish, and over 200 other languages, right, for interpretation. The thought I want to leave with you today, it's by Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Let me repeat. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. End of quote. So that's the end of our show today. Have a great year. Do something that you've never done before. Help someone you have never helped before. Get your goals set and start the year right. And make one of the goals I'd like you to make is to call me or to email me and let me know that you'd like to share your story. Thank you so much. Until another time. Bye-bye.